Welcome to another episode of Chomp Talk at Brazosport College. I'm Vincent Solis, college president. Welcome. And today we have a really exciting show. We have our very own local state rep, Cody Vasut. Representative Vasut, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
We're excited to have you.
Absolutely. I think this is pretty neat.
Yeah, you know, we were just talking about this. This is it's a different way to reach our audience.
Yeah.
You know, it's the modern world. So we've got several of these podcasts that get broadcast into the community, into the virtual world, so that we can let everybody know all the great things that are happening at BC.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love it.
I want to thank you first and foremost, Representative Vasut, for all the work that you have done to champion BC. There are so many things that we simply couldn't do without having your voice, your advocacy, and we just want to thank you on behalf of the institution for all that you do for the community, the service, but for us here at the college. Your voice and advocacy for higher education is something that we are really grateful, and we appreciate all you do in your role as state representative.
I'm happy to do it. Everything that the investments you make in the community make that an easy decision, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've talked about this a lot. You know, community college, I think, is on the front lines of addressing so many of the workforce needs we have in this state and providing affordable education to all of our I wanted to say kids, students down here. We were at an event the other day, and somebody said, "Oh man, when I'm 30," and there was like a 38-year-old on the panel. 30's not old.
Yeah,
students,
yeah.
But the investments you make in them is phenomenal. So I'm happy and always willing to support Brazosport College.
We appreciate you, Representative Vasut. Today we are talking. Actually, the theme for this whole year is on leadership.
Mm-hmm.
So. You've got a really compelling and I would say amazing story in leadership. You started out really, really young. I believe you were 25 years old at your first at bat when you were on city council in Angleton.
So I was trying to think if it was 25, 28, somewhere in there. It was my 20s for sure.
You were in your 20s for sure. So let me start this off. Well, first, how do you define leadership? How does Cody Vasut define leadership in general? As a state rep, as a local leader, how do you? What's important to you about the concept of leadership?
I think about the biblical model, which Jesus says the last shall be first in the kingdom of heaven, and then that has as a lead through the idea called servant leadership. That's what we teach at Texas A&M, where I went to school, and it's a model of basically those who lead are supposed to serve. There's a difference between a manager and a leader. A manager kind of tells people what to do. A leader shows them the example and guides them and motivates them to follow his lead. And that involves serving others. So servant leadership is true leadership as far as how I interpret it.
That's great. Let me ask you this, Representative Vasut. So you started out early and young.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Well, why did you lean in at such an early? Why step into that fray? I think politics and leadership is very different than, for example, the kind of job that I
Sure.
do. You know, I have nowhere near as difficult a job as you have. You're in politics. Obviously, that can be a very difficult arena. How did you decide to step into that at such an early age, and what drove that decision?
When I was growing up, I would go to dinner at my grandparents' house, and we would talk around the dinner table about what was going on in Angleton. That's where I grew up.
Right.
And my grandfather was in the Rotary Club. He was a small business owner. My mom was on the school board. My dad was a police officer who then became a justice of the peace. My uncle was a narcotics officer undercover. And then my aunt and grandmother worked in the school district. And so everybody had kind of a working knowledge of what was going on. And more importantly, they had some type of role to serve their community in various ways. And it was drilled into me at a young age that what we do, at least as far as my family, is we serve our community. And that can be in any number of ways, and I think it needs to be in a way that you have the skill set to be able to be effective. We're not all the same. We all serve in different ways. So when I went to A&M and got my degree there and went into student government up there, I knew I wanted to serve and I wanted to learn. And I learned through practice in student government that debate, public policy, and the law were things that interest me, that I had a strong suit in public speaking and reasoning. And that led me to go to law school, to get a law degree, to be able to articulate and argue. And all of that prepared me with a skill set that I think was best suited for public policy, both understanding complex issues, being able to build relationships with others, and then to argue on those
Yeah.
issues. And where is best for somebody like that to serve? In my mind, it was in a policy making role. And so I remember when I moved back from when I first got married, we lived up in Pearland for a brief period of time, and then we came back to Angleton. And a spot opened up on city council in 2016, and I decided to run for it because I thought, hey, this is a perfect way to serve in public policy. And I did that for 4 years, and I wanted to stay there a long time, but the slot in the state rep opened up in 2019, and I decided that, hey, this is really a perfect match for my skill set. This is where I believe I'm called to serve. And so I put my hat in the ring, and I was able to win.
The rest is history.
Yeah, so it's all about just, I think everybody's called to serve in some way. It's just finding where your skill set matches. And for me, it was in public policy.
It's interesting. You talk about student government, Representative Vasut. I was a student government advisor for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it always amazed me that you could tell the students that were coming through there, these students are going to go change someone's life. They're going to go do something big in the world. And the connection to A&M, I was at A&M Kingsville, you were at the mothership. And I'll never forget that they had something called the Chancellor Advisory Student.
Yes.
Yeah, so that it was the one for the Chancellor. And so we would take the students up there. It's a really great learning experience for students. So for students watching this, get involved with student government when you come to BC or when you go to university. It's a great environment to learn some of these things.
Absolutely it is.
But I'll tell you this, Rep, I was on one of these trips, and we took all the students from the A&M system to DC. And they were talking, they're having these really big discussions about what they were going to go do in life and how they were going to change the world. And there was one gentleman who I was just really impressed with. He was talking with the other students, and I said, that young man is going to go be somebody big, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could just tell.
Mm-hmm.
Several years later, I'm watching TV. It was Congressman Hurd out of San
Oh,
Antonio.
yeah.
I
Will.
said, I remember him because,
Mm-hmm.
he just stood out in that environment in terms of student government. But it's a great proving ground. To your point, I encourage all students to get involved and learn, because it's a great opportunity to learn and make mistakes, pick up, and then there's always somebody there to help you kind of shepherd the path. So it's a good environment. Let me ask you this, Rep. So you're now in this very important role. You've got big projects that you have worked very diligently to accomplish and work on and be successful at. You're placed with tremendous amount of responsibility in the role that you have as a representative. You serve, about 185,000 people in District 25.
That's right.
How do you balance as a leader all those voices?
That's a good question. So the only way I could think to approach this was, I think so there's two models that I've always been told. There's this called a statesman model and a representative model. And I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think they coalesce, right? Sometimes you're called to be a statesman. A statesman is somebody that makes a decision that they believe is in the best interest of their constituents, even though it might not be supported by a majority of the constituents, okay? And then there's the representative model, which is you make a decision that is based off of what a majority of your people support. And I think in different scenarios, you have to use those two models. For me, it was important that I told everybody when I ran what my values were. I had this pulled up here. My values, be very transparent. How do I analyze every issue? So for me personally, it was telling her I have a biblical worldview. That means I view things through the lens of Scripture. Ethics are important to me. I believe in Christian ethics. I don't believe that the ends justify the means if the means are immoral or illegal. I'm never, no matter whether if it's politically popular or not, I'm not going to do something that I believe is immoral. Inherent rights, I think that people have inherent rights from God and that the Constitution exists only to protect those rights. Those include things like freedom of worship, freedom of speech, Second Amendment rights, right to self-defense, right to raise your family. And so regardless of what people think, I'm going to protect those rights. And then finally, the final two for me were conservatism. I believe government ought to be limited in its scope. So the things that government does ought to be a few. But I also believe that government should be effective in its operation. That means whatever few things government does, it ought to do well. Because a government that is too big is too powerful. That's a threat to individual liberty. And a government that does a few things very poorly is incompetent, and that's a threat to individual liberty. And the final value for me was service, which is I'm going to seek to do what is best for the people I represent. So I wanted to be transparent. Those are my values. So how do I approach these situations where got 185,000 people and people disagree? If it contradicts my values, I'm going to vote my values, and I've told everybody what they are. If it aligns with my values, then what I'm going to do is I want to hear from the people. I want to hear from various sources about this particular policy. Look at the data. Is this a good idea? Going back to my service value, will this make things better for the people of Brazoria County? And I have to evaluate it. And that's a learning process. Sometimes the information we have lead us to a certain conclusion. New information comes in the future. We may realize we were wrong, and we have to go back and change it. And that's a learning process. That's life. That's what I think the representative model is about, is constantly listening to your people and realizing that you might have to course correct sometimes. But ultimately, for me, it's values first. If it aligns with the values, then what is the best public policy second, based off of data and hearing from the constituents.
Thank you for that, Rep. Let me ask you a leadership question,
Mhm.
Representative Vasut, about there's lots of theories about leadership. We learn about them in school and we talk about them. We try to figure out which theories work best in our world.
Yep.
One that I've often wondered a lot about in my own leadership journey is the 4 stove burner theory, where it says leadership is about managing that stove where you got 4 burners. You got work, you've got your family, you have your friends, and then you have the things that make up the ability to do these things, like your health and wellness, right? Your
Right.
mental health and all. So you got these 4 things going. And what the theory basically says is that really, really, really successful people, which I don't know if I agree on this 100%, one of these burners just burns really, really hot, which is usually work, right? It consumes most of your time. But obviously, there are things in the other 3 categories, which are family, you know, faith, the things that are really important. Then you got your friends over here that still, are important, and then taking care of yourself in all the aspects that come with that. What are your thoughts on that? And you, specifically, because you're between here and Austin, you're at every event. The community expects to see you, and they look forward to pressing the flesh every time that they have an opportunity to talk to the state
Yeah.
rep. How do you do the management of those 4 burners, and how does that work for you as a state rep with time consumed at
Yeah.
all levels?
I don't think anybody does it perfectly.
Right.
And that's, to be transparent, that's always a hard thing to do. When you were telling me about the burners, I was thinking about the guy like spinning all the plates in the
Same.
air.
Yeah.
You're trying to balance everything. I think at a core, I think of Ordo Amoris, which is an old theological term for the order of love, which is love God, love your church and family, and then love your neighbor, et cetera, right? And there's an order. And you can't effectively love your neighbor unless you love your family, and you can't effectively love your family unless you love your God. That's the Christian Ordo Amoris. Now, how do I balance that with this? I think first off, I have to make sure that I'm taking care of my family. That's one thing I struggle with. I'm not perfect at that by any stretch of the imagination. Sometimes family does have to come first. And so I think about that burner, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I would say that family burner is probably the most important burner.
Absolutely.
But there's a temptation always that the other burners take precedence. Beyond that, I think you have to keep your commitments. I'm a very big guy that if I say I'm going to do something, I do it.
Agreed.
And so because of that, because I have to balance family and keeping commitments, it's very important to be careful about the commitments that you make. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So let's say I have a family event that's very important that I need to be at. It's important for me not to commit to go to something else, because if I commit to go to something, I need to be there. I keep my commitments. So I'm very careful about the things that I say I'm going to go to for that reason, to balance those interests. But beyond that, I think it's important that I'm in the community. The state rep job, many people don't know, is part-time, and you have to work as well in order to make a living. We make $600 a month. That's our salary. And of course, we do have benefits, which is nice. I really appreciate that. But in the grand scheme of things, you're probably only making $2 or $3 an hour for what for your work. So it is a sacrifice, as it should be. That's a good thing. So I say the way I do it is you have your family stuff, and then during the week, I'm about half-time state rep, half-time work. And I try to balance those. and I try not to overcommit on work or on state rep to go beyond those constraints. That's the only way I know to balance it, to keep all the plates spinning in the air right, and to keep all those burners going is to have it 50-50 during my 40 hours a week, and then the rest of my time with my family.
Yeah, there's only so much fuel in the gas tank, right? You got to figure out where
And
you.
you have to set aside times that are just like no goes.
Yeah,
And I would even say I've heard this in some leadership things that you even have to have time of nothing.
that's it. I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in that
Yep.
one too, Rep. When
Yep.
I get home, like I don't have technology at my home. I got a TV. I don't use it much. Unfortunately, we're tied to our phones. I use
Right.
that a lot,
Right.
but I don't have a computer. If I need a computer, I can come back to the office. I don't. I just. It's a time to disengage. You're always on call, but I believe that everybody should have some form of a hobby, some kind of an escape where you're
Yeah.
doing where your mind gets to rest because our jobs tire the mind, not necessarily the body, right? We're not working physically, we're working mentally, and the brain doesn't shut off when you're lying in bed and you're thinking about things. I'm a big believer that you should have something that just quiets the mind, whether it's your faith, your hobbies, going for a walk, whatever it is, but
Yeah.
something that just centers you back. I think perspective is also really important. Perspective on what's important. We show up and we make it happen for all the people that are counting on us. Why do you do it? Right. So that's my question for you. So
Yeah.
we talked about that. Where's your passion? This is not an easy job that you have. What drives you?
Well, for me, it's my faith. I think back to what is told in Scripture, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And there's always a looking backwards type of thing. And I think you look forward to look backwards. Let me explain what I mean by that. I will not be the state rep forever. I've even told people that I'm going to term limit myself. That's like I'm committed to that. I'm going to do that. So it's important when you have that perspective to say, okay, when I am done, or the voters tell me I'm done, which either way, when I'm done, will I have be able to look back and say I did what I thought was right and best, and right. I'm not going to be known forever as a state representative. I'm going to be known forever as a child of God. And so, is God going to look at me and say, "Well done, my good and faithful servant, for what you did here"? And then obviously, I have the core people in my life that I know are going to tell me the truth and tell me the right things. And are they going to look and tell me you did good? And so that's how I look at it. I look forward to looking back. And so everything every decision I make, everything is driven by that. Am I going, when I look back at this, is this going to be a good decision?
So speaking of looking back, Rip, what's legacy look like? 20 years from now, 30 years from now, because obviously you still got a lot of miles
Yeah,
on the engine. What does legacy look like?
nobody can take anything for granted. Life is precious. It's here today, gone tomorrow. Ecclesiastes says we're a mist, right? And then there's seasons of it, right? If I assume that I live the average lifespan in 50 years, right, and I look back, I would hope that um, things are more affordable, that people are as free, or if not more free, than when I took office, that my children have a good place to grow up, a good economy, opportunity, all the things that I had, the blessings I had, and that the well-being of the community is improved. If those things are better, I think we've done well. I remember we had one of those time capsules that they've put underground at the new courthouse. And I don't know who all wrote stuff. I went and decided, no, I'm the state rep. It's my obligation and duty to write a letter to the people. It was either 50 or 70. I think it's 50 years from now. And I don't know whether I'm going to be alive or not.
You will.
So I wrote in there, of course, I love my children. I hope they're reading this. I hope they did well. And then I talked about some of the things I hoped for this community. And I said, basically, I hope that Brazoria County was still a good place to live, work, and raise a family. And I can't, you know me, I always put a few jokes in there. I don't know if I wrote, like, I hope Angleton got a Chick-fil-A or something like that. But I'm sure there were a few of those lines.
Yeah.
But I think that's how I would gauge success, is looking back and being able to say those things.
Now you know, folks, why he's our state rep. That was a really great answer. I appreciate
Well,
that.
that is the answer.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Rep. So you've been always, as long as I've known you, a huge supporter of the college, education. Why do you lean in so heavily into education and making sure that the community has access to great educational services, whether it's at a local school district or here at the college? Why is that so important to you?
So I'll take them kind of reverse order. Let me start at the community college level and then down to K through 12. So for community college, for me, I went to A&M. I did the 4-year traditional going there. I had a little bit of debt, but I got that paid off. I was fortunate and blessed to get a really good job to be able to do that. But I know that for too long, we put students,
Yeah.
into a bucket that everybody goes and gets a 4-year degree. And regardless of whether it was well suited for them, that's like telling everybody that the only way to serve your community is to be a state rep. That's not true at all. Or an elective office. That's not true at all. Or that the only way to serve at church is to be in the praise band. That's not true at all. You can't put everybody into a bucket. So for me, community college is a much better option for most of the people that I know. I did a college ministry here and still do with Bradsport College over the years for young adults, and I've got to see them, and they all come from different walks of life, and they're a lot of them are not the traditional 4-year university. They need to have a good option that they can come and get work-life skills, that they can get immediate employment at a fair and cheap price, cheaper compared to 4-year, and that they can graduate with no debt. And Bradsport College and Alvin College, they've changed their name, are great options to do that. And so I'm very passionate about supporting them for that reason, because I just think we've put too many kids into the 4-year model for too long, and I think that the vocational 2-year, and y'all do have 4-year degrees, that's a better fit for them. So that's what I would say about community colleges. On K through 12, I know there's been a lot of discussion and things about whether school choice and adequately funding our schools. I think there's a hard question there about what does it mean to adequately fund our schools? For me, it means that they have the resources needed to be able to educate our kids and to get them on grade level for reading, on grade level for math, and that they're producing well-rounded citizens. In Angleton, we're all about character counts. Is one of our biggest things there.
Sure is.
And so making sure that we're graduating kids that have good character. And for me, I have always been of the mindset that I want our school districts to function as independently as they can. I do personally get frustrated in the legislature that there's too many bills that kind of tie their hands. Even the bills where we want to get rid of, say, the STAR test, there's like unintended consequences that flow from it. And I get it. I get the angst. I try to vote for just the best thing I can. I would love to do better. But for me, K through 12 is an important thing. But it's also important, I have, as I've gotten older, that I've realized, even when I have kids, is that we provide options and opportunities for parents to choose from. Because just like everybody is not the same when it comes to college, everybody's not the same when it comes to K through 12. Some kids learn better in a homeschool environment. Some kids learn better in a private school, a parochial school. Some kids learn better in traditional K through 12. My kids learn, I think, best in traditional K through 12. That's where they go. And that's where my daughter Sparrow gets the care she needs. But there's different options that need to be there. So where I've landed is we need to fund community colleges more because they need to provide, they do provide a better alternative for kids. We need to fund our K through 12 programs as adequately as we can. And I think the $8.5 billion investment we did last session was a big step for that. And then we need to give parents more options. And I think we do all three of those things, we're going to have a better educational environment.
Thank you, Rep. Let me ask you this, there's a more technical question. With all the information that you deal with as a state representative that are coming through all these proposals, there are literally thousands of bills that are being introduced, and everybody's working on those.
We're almost at 10,000.
Yeah. How do you, this is more of a technical question for the listening and the viewing audience, how do you manage the amount of data and research that needs to get done on all of these items to determine where you're going to land on some of these things that are really critical? How do you manage the data flow?
The first thing we do is we have our bills. So the bills that I file and am shepherding through. We meet with constituents. They'll bring those ideas to us, or we'll figure those things out. We'll gather research on that, and we'll have our bill packets with all the data. And so that's my bills. So those are very thoroughly vetted. I write most of them myself as a lawyer. And so let's say I have a stack of 70 bills over here. Put those aside. How do I handle all the others? Let's say there's a round number of 10,000 other bills, because we're almost there.
Yeah.
We're almost there. I cannot possibly read all of them, nor would I, because most of the bills never get a hearing. So which ones do I read? I'm on 2 committees. I read the bills that come to my committee for a hearing. I hear from constituents that will email me about bills, and we have a bill tracking system, and we'll flag, I think it's called LDR, but I'll go in there and I'll say, I received a phone call from so-and-so. They're very passionate about this bill. And we have a note there. And when I'm on my computer, I can see those notes. So if that bill ever came up, I would have that. I don't read them all, though. Only the ones that people flag for me or that come to my committee. And then the next stage is that bills get set on a calendar in the House. When they get set on a calendar in the House, they go onto one of 2 calendars, regular or local and consent. For regular, I'm going to read those bills. Those are big public policy. I'm actually going to vote on them, so I read them.
Every single one of those, Rep, you read those.
I can never say I read every single one, but I endeavor to
You're
on the
immersed in it.
regular calendar. And I do tend to read almost all of them because my role that I have is defending bills from points of order. So I tend to review them all. But I can never say I've read every single page of every single bill. But in addition to that, my staff, though, do read every single page of every single bill, and they'll provide me recommendations. Then there's external sources where people, for example, the Community College Association reads any bill that impacts them. There's organizations like Farm Bureau Ag Fund will read every bill that impacts farmers and ranchers, and they'll give us recommendations on those bills. So I have all of that material. And then on my desk is something called an HRO analysis that summarizes those. And I can see pro-con arguments in those. If I ever have a bill I'm unsure of, I'll look at that and look at the pro-con. So all that information flows to me, and then I have to vote on the bill. And a lot of times, though, we vote a lot of amendments, and those come up on the fly. I have to make split-second decisions. Sometimes we do have to vote those party lines because I trust that there is a member of my party that is more of an expert on that issue than I am, and I have to follow them. Or it might be that it's not a partisan thing and it's just an expert. There may be somebody in the House I know is an expert on that particular area, and I have to depend on them to tell me, hey, man, I sell insurance for a living. This is a bad idea for this reason, right? So that's the regular bills. The last one's the local and consent. There's hundreds of those. Those bills, what I'm looking at is to make sure that they truly were local. My staff is predominantly who I rely on for that. I'm not going to go read every single page of a bill creating a municipal utility district in some part of the state that has nothing to do with me, as long as I know it's local and for them. And so that's what we're evaluating. So we don't read all of the local and consent bills. We just verify that they are truly local and consent. And the same with resolution.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. We have staff that help with that. And at the end of the day, as we get further and further into the session, things will break down a little bit because the volume gets just too high. And that's why it's important that we have a part-time legislature and that bills have a process where they do die, because the less bills we pass, the better. Because if you just pass everything, people are not going to be able to read them all. They're not going to be able to understand.
Right. Keep up with them.
Yeah. So even though 10,000 bills may be filed, only maybe 1,000 will pass each chamber, and of those, only half will come into law. So you might have 1,000 laws, 2,000 pass both chambers, 6,000 are considered, 10,000 filed.
An interesting job, to say the least.
It's totally different than D.C. I can't imagine in D.C. the volume of bills is so much lower.
Let me ask you this, Rep. So what has changed? So you've been at this in your short, life as a young adult. You've accomplished so much. You started out very early. What's different in your perspective on leadership from when you first started out to where you're at now? What have you learned through the process as a leader?
I think you invariably over time have to learn when to speak and when not to speak. That's a part of growing in wisdom. We all have strong opinions, I assume. I have strong opinions on plenty of things. I'll talk to my wife about plenty of things. The things I read in the paper, things I hear on the community, things that people tell me about. I don't comment on all of them. I comment on them less than I used to. And the reason why is, as I've gotten older, I've come to learn that sometimes we don't have all the right information. And then also, people don't need to hear your opinion on every subject, to the sun. I get emails sometimes where people are asking me, why haven't you posted on this thing? And it's usually something they've read on CNN or Fox News that's national. And it's like, that's another state. I don't have confidence that I know the issue well enough to comment on it. And it's a developing issue. And if I comment one thing, it may go another. Sometimes I break that rule, and I usually come to regret it. because we're human beings.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I've learned is that less is more, and to be a little bit more reserved on forming judgments. I learned that you can't please everybody, and that's just a fact of life,
Yeah.
and it's okay.
It's okay.
I tell you what, Nancy and I, my district director,
Phenomenal.
we
by the
try to
way.
help everybody we can. We can't always. People will call us with passion about things. Well, if I can agree with them,
Yeah.
I like to because I tend to be an agreeable person. If you ever do that psychological thing, I have that big A. I'm a big on agreeableness, but that's because of my personality. But I know I can't always, and sometimes you just have to say, "I'm sorry. I appreciate your perspective, but I
Yeah.
disagree," and it is what it
Part of
is.
the process.
Yeah, you can't make
Part of
everybody
the
happy.
process.
And then the last thing is, I think you know, information flow can get messed up and people can form opinions on things incorrectly
Sound bites.
and they sound bites and they may
Yeah.
want to yell at you about it or get after you. And all I've learned to do is to be as transparent as I can. People may not like the reasoning for a decision I make, but if they're relying on false information, I'm going to tell them the truth. I'll tell them why I made the decision, and it is what it is. And there's every single decision that I've made that people have had concerns with, at least that I've understood. I just tell them why. Sometimes I'm able to persuade them, sometimes I'm not, but that's all I know to do.
Rep, in these big jobs that you have as a state rep, when so many people are counting on your decisions, on your involvement, on your connection to the community, where do you find your source of mentoring? Who do you look to as a mentor, both either friend in the world of faith or in the world of politics? Like who, there's somebody that can help shepherd the path in all those areas. Who are your mentors?
Well, I go to my wife for counsel quite a bit, my family, my close friends, and my church small group guys, and I'll run things by them. My best friend, if I feel like, man, have I made a mistake? I'll run it by them. You also become friends a lot with your fellow members, and you kind of learn which one of them are well-intentioned, wise, and you go to them for counsel, and we try to check ourselves on that.
That's an
Who
important aspect of it.
it is, it is. It's very important in life to always have somebody that has been through the same thing you had to be able to ask them advice. And talking amongst ourselves as reps, we from both parties, we all experience it. I mean, I've talked with my Democratic colleagues at times. They get pressure on different issues. They sure do, and they
Yep.
deal with it. And we have a Bible study that we do with Democrats and Republicans at the House that I do. And I try to defuse situations as much as I can with hugs and understanding and everything. But we know at the end of the day we're going to vote,
Yeah.
and that's is what it is. The other thing I'd say is last one is my mentor, my guidance, North Star besides Jesus would be William Wilberforce, 100%. William Wilberforce had two things he wanted to do when he came into office. He was a member of Parliament in England in the late 1700s, early 1800s. He wanted to end slavery, and he wanted Britain to return to a moral stasis, right? Good virtue. And so my two things were, I want to end abortion, and I want Texas to be moral. And so William Wilberforce has been my guiding light as far as, when you look back, good and faithful servant as a politician, you'd be like William Wilberforce, you done all right.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you a technical question, Rep. You're one of the best public speakers that I've seen. You have a natural ability to connect to the audience. I've seen you multiple times at the Capitol when we have Brazoria County Day, which, by the way, this year I'm co-chairing, so
Oh,
I'm excited
nice.
about that. So
Yes. I love the
we'll see
shrimp.
you up there. Yeah, it's a great event. But talk to the viewers a little bit in terms of how did you get as good as you are? What's the recommendations, feedback, advice that you have? Because there are people out there that are going to listen and watch this. There's a young Cody Vasut somewhere that says, "Hey, I would like to do that for all the reasons that they want to." But public speaking and your ability to convey a message, convey an argument, talk about why you're making decisions, all of those are really important. But you've got a gift to be able to tell someone, "Hey, I don't agree with you, and here's why," and they still walk out there admiring and respecting you, right? So that's a talent. What kind of advice do you have for the audience and people that are looking to become aspiring leaders about public speaking? It's such an important skill,
Yeah.
but how did you get as good as you are?
Well, I think it's important to to be grounded with knowledge of a subject. So learning the subject is to start with. And you develop that over time. But if you're starting out and you want to speak about something, learn about something to begin with. Number two, it's also about delivery. I think that you have to know your audience, and I'll be fully transparent. This is how you speak publicly and effectively. I think you adjust how you talk and the things you emphasize depending on your audience. You have to, and that because that you're trying to convey a point to them,
Right.
and everybody listens and learns differently. And so you need to learn people, get to know people, get to know the subject. Mechanics, I would say, study the people that have been effective communicators in the past. A lot of times it's you need to be humble. You need to talk from the heart. You need to have your 3 points. And,
Keep it brief.
if you're going to have more points than that, have 3 points for your 3 points. 9 is the limit. I'm a Baptist lay preacher, and that's how we exegete Scripture is 3 points every Sunday. That's what we do, and practice makes perfect. So watch people that are good speakers, come up with your 3 points and practice. Now, I'll tell you a few guys that I've done and looked at over the years. Great communicators in history: Ronald Reagan, Jack Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, to a degree, Delano Roosevelt. The Bushes, I think, those are guys that I've looked to that are decent communicators. I looked at film. You think about film and great speeches in movies and how they're structured. You kind of gauge that in. And then preachers. I mean, you look at effective preachers and how they're able to connect. And usually it's clarity, conciseness, colloquialism, those 3 things. And the colloquialism is to be able to connect with people.
To your point, the practice piece. I had a
Yeah.
boss tell me once, he said, look, if you're going to get in this business, because he was asking me, I was young, I was probably 27 at the time, and he was talking about, what do you want to do in your career? He was a dean, and he was one of my greatest mentors, and he's, we were talking about, what do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be a dean. At that time, that was my moonshot. I said, I'd like to be a dean of students.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, then you need to speak as often as you can. You need to be prepared when you go to meetings with questions, read agendas beforehand, be prepared, lean in, deliver on what you say you're going to do. He gave me all the points. But one thing that he said was, he says, remember that you're going to have the speech or presentation that you practiced, right?
Yeah.
And then he says, then you're going to get this, you're going to do the one that you did, right? And then he goes, the one that's most important is the one that you wish you would have done. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So he says, you're going to practice one, you're going to deliver something different than what you practiced. He goes, and then you're going to reflect on what you delivered so that you can get to a point where you're really comfortable delivering messages, because it's such an important part of it. And he wasn't wrong. The other thing that he told me, Rep, was he says, there's nobody in the audience better than anybody else in that audience.
Oh, yeah.
He said, and as long as you can keep grounded and stay focused. He gave me some other practical tips. He said, always arrive early to the location where you're going to be doing the presentation, get a feel for the room,
Yeah, get
know your
comfortable.
audience, get comfortable. So, but you're one of the best, Rep. I've seen you
Well,
speak a lot of times, and I've been very impressed with your ability to not just deliver the message, but inspire the people to the message you're delivering. So a lot of people provide information.
Yeah.
But I've always been impressed with your ability to convey messages in a way that people are receptive to those messages.
Absolutely. I tell people I don't prepare speeches. I don't have anything prepared for today either, right? I mean, but I've done it so much. I do prepare when it's like a memorial, and I will read those. And I've as I've gotten older, I forgot to mention Abraham Lincoln is a good one. If you're going to do prepared speeches, look at how he was very short and concise. Some of his best speeches were very Emancipation Proclamation, Gettysburg Address, right? Very, very short.
There's a great book that I would recommend, Rep. Really gave me a different perspective on Abraham Lincoln. De Lorenzo is the author, and he wrote a book called The Real Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you, because he was an amazing attorney, right? He was very powerful with words, and but yeah, great speechwriter for sure. Short,
Absolutely.
concise, to the point. Yeah,
Study poetry is another way.
that's another way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, we need to get back to that. Our public speeches need to be more poetic. They historically were. I mean, America's just got rich political history and poetry interwoven with it.
Yeah, I guess how do we do it in an age where everything is 120 characters or less, right? So
I know.
that's the piece.
Well, I think most of us can agree. Social media has had its pros, and it certainly had
I'm not a fan.
cons. I'm not. I have to do it
I
for
know,
the
same,
job. I
same.
don't. I'm not a fan. I don't like I don't like speaking ill of anybody. I
Yeah,
don't like that.
yeah,
I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it at some point. I don't like it. It's not
yeah,
me.
yeah,
And so, but I think social media brings that out of people.
yeah.
You got to
It
be
really
careful.
does. What's the saying? May you live in interesting times. I think that's where we're at. Let me ask you this. Speaking of social media, Rep, how do you deal in the role that you're in as a state rep? Again, going back to all these people that you're responsible to in terms of being an elected official, how do you deal with criticism?
So criticisms can come into three categories, I think. Constructive criticism, which is absolutely fair, right? I mean, if
Yeah,
nobody's
absolutely.
perfect,
Absolutely.
I've had so many conversations with friends recently, like, oh, I can't believe this is happening. I go, well, that's how I know the Bible's true, because the Bible says that all men are sinners, and that's my observation, including me. And so, yeah, we can all, you know, learn and reflect. So when somebody comes and talks to me, I always try to think that what they're saying is constructive criticism until proven otherwise. And I always listen to it and I bear it in mind. And it very well may be that they're right and I'm wrong and I need to change. Sometimes we have to deal with criticism that's comes from the right place but is misinformed. And I think in that place you have to just give
That's
the
a great
truth
point.
and correct it and hope that the person's going to be receptive to that. And you can win them over, persuade them,
A
right?
great point. Yeah.
The last one is just what you call negative criticism, where people just want to dog on you.
Yeah.
And sometimes people might be genuinely upset that they've had this negative experience with government or a bill that we've passed, and they just need to be heard out. So with those negative criticisms, I listen. You acknowledge that you've heard it, and then you ask the people that are close to you if what they've said is true or not to be able to determine if it is constructive criticism. But if it's just pure negative criticism, you just have to listen to it, acknowledge it, make sure they're heard, and just move on. You're
Absolutely.
never going to please everybody, but you treat everybody with respect and dignity.
And I think that's an art in and of itself for leaders is how do you let go of those items? You have to get comfortable in the space. One of the things that I am a big firm believer on is that the older that I've gotten, Rep, is that there are lots of things that come with getting old. I've lost my hair, I've weight, I've got bad knees, you name it, right?
Yep.
But one of the greatest gifts that comes with being older, which this year I became an official senior citizen. So
Oh,
it's
no.
yeah, I know,
I'm just
no, it's
kidding.
right, yeah, I was
I'm
with you
kidding.
right there.
What is 65 is the new 30.
Well, yeah, well, 55
Oh,
for me,
55?
yeah.
Well,
So
hey, look
yeah,
at that.
yeah.
Under the
But
under the lieutenant governor's plan, you
that's
might get a
right.
tax
That's
cut
so
soon.
maybe there.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
I guess part of it is with how do you let that go, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's important for particularly young viewers that are just starting out their leadership journey. They want to be, like I said, the next Cody Vasut. They want to be a college president. They want to be whatever they're going to grow up to be. And I mean that as a term of endearment in their journey. How do you let go of the negativity in a world where negativity sells? You know, when you look
Yeah.
at media, when you look at the news and everything that's in that scrolling on social media, everything is almost always bad in some way, form, or shape. How do you learn to let that go as a
Well,
leader?
nobody's perfect. I don't care who you are, things will get to people. We're human beings.
Yeah.
The best way I know is um, to when somebody's mad at you, to presume the best of intentions in their heart and that maybe they delivered it wrong. So when you're charitable with people, you tend to be less angry or less upset with them. When you're charitable, you have a charitable disposition to them. The second thing is, you're not going to please everybody. So you have to have a standard of, am I doing the right thing and whose opinion matters? For me, God tells me to do something. I tell you what, I don't do everything that God tells me to do. We all fall short, but His standards, I acknowledge His standards are there. So as long as I know that those are true and I'm trying to live by them, that's a good place to be. And then people that are close in your life, for me, my wife, my close family, close friends, as long as they're telling me and they're reflecting that I'm doing the right thing, or at least as close to the right thing as I, as a human being, can, then I have to just be okay that I'm not going to please everybody.
And I
And
think that's the biggest piece, Rep, is
yeah,
if you realize that and that clarity, that wisdom that comes to you as you get older, that life becomes clearer in terms of what's really important.
yeah,
That's what getting older gives you. It gives you that clarity and that wisdom. That, look, here are the things that you can work on. Here are the things that you can change. Here are the things that you can impact. Be in the service of others.
hmm
And at the end of the day, you try your best, you work on behalf of others as a leader, and you leave it all on the table, right? And you have to be comfortable with that. But that ability to not, it's more than developing thick skin. I think it's really being able to process because to your
You have
point,
to process it.
yeah, you have to
Yeah, it is.
process it
I
because
mean,
there's,
nobody is like totally immune.
of course, yeah,
I mean,
we're all human
Jesus,
beings.
perfect life, they
Yeah,
killed him. I mean, like it's
yeah,
he's got every right to be upset, and he had to process it too. But he was, and of course, he's perfect. He's able to. But we as human beings should not expect anything
the
less
human
in our lives.
condition.
It's the part of being a human
Yeah,
that you're gonna be wronged by people
sure.
sometimes, and you have to let it go. I always drive this home with people. Like forgiveness is should be freely extended to those who ask for it, because when you don't forgive, all you're doing is hurting yourself. That only
That's
hurt.
it. It's a gift
It's
you
not,
give
it
to
doesn't hurt
yourself.
them at all. It's just hurting
I
yourself.
I tell folks the same.
Let it
It's a
go.
gift you give to yourself. There's
Yes.
no need to carry that around. And
And
here's
all the angst that we feel when
yeah,
people get mad at us, and that's all internal processing in
it
our
is.
head.
And I have to tell
Yeah.
people, Rep, is they're not because people get into their own head a lot, and
Yeah.
they're like, "Well, what is Cody and Vince? What are
Yeah.
they
It's
thinking
easy to
about
do.
me?" Cody and Vince are so busy with
Yeah.
everything else. You're not
Most
even
people
on
are
their
not thinking
radar.
about you.
Most
Yep.
people are not thinking about
Yep.
you. But we go through those stages. Let me ask you this, Rep. So, in the position that you have, obviously, you have a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of power that comes with the position that you have as a state rep. There's only a few of you in the entire state.
Mhm.
As a leader, what does responsible power look like to you?
For me, it goes back to my value about conservatism. And what I mean by that is this idea that power should be used very sparingly. And I'll tell you that we do get trends. They come and go, and they come on each side of the political persuasion. I don't care what your political views are. People, when they see something that they don't like, they kind of want to change it. And maybe the default that we go to in America a lot of times is, well, I'm going to have the government change that.
Right.
A lot of times you have to just base it. A lot of times I default to, unless I am firmly convinced that the government needs to do this, the government should not be doing this because of the problems that come when government gets involved. I mean, where does all the tax money come from that we spend? It comes from people don't donate
No.
to the government. I think what
No.
was it? The
Yeah.
joke George Bush one time said, or it might have been President Obama. Hey, you can donate to the IRS. Ain't nobody donating to the
Nobody's
IRS.
donating.
It comes from compulsion. And so I got to think like, yeah, this might be a good program to support, but is it worth forcing Jane Doe, a 70-year-old retiree living on a fixed income, to force her almost at the barrel of a gun to turn over money to fund this? And so you have to be pretty reserved on doing things, I think.
Responsible power, big part
Yeah,
of being a leader.
wait, the old Spider-Man reference. With great
With that
power
comes-
comes great responsibility.
We-
I'm a millennial. I'm a product of all the quotes from all the movies. Yeah.
Pop culture.
Yeah.
Rep, let me ask you this. So let's talk a little bit about our community, which we live in an amazing part of the world.
We do.
Not just in the greatest state. I'm a big believer that, I've been a lot of different places. I've lived in different parts of the world. They've all been good to me. But as always, for everybody, there's no place like home, right? So we live in, this big old state of Texas. It's an amazing place to live. In our community in Brazoria County, what do you think as the state rep Brazoria County will need out of its leaders collectively? There's a lot of people in the community that make things happen for our community. What does the county and our area need from its leaders over the next 10 to 20 years? What are your thoughts on that?
We have to manage growth and all the things that come with it, water, electricity, resources, because we are a growing county. We need to manage and support continued investment in industry and attracting new industries to this area because we need jobs. And I know parts of our industries here lately have been struggling with the market the way it is, but they're vital to this area. I want everybody to be able to have an opportunity, the equal opportunity that I had to be able to raise their family and to get a good job and work. So we got to be focused on that as leaders. We need to make sure that we're governing ethically and that we're setting a good example. Man, I would love for America to go back to the idea that we hold those that serve us to a higher standard. And I think all of our
Amen.
local officials need to be held to the highest standards of ethics, of morality, of clarity in their relationships, honoring your wife and your spouse, right? I mean, you can't Can't honor your spouse. How can you honor your constituents? Right.
Yeah.
So that's important. And then I'd say that our leaders be involved. It's very important to be involved in the community. You cannot be effective at serving Brazoria County if you're not involved in Brazoria County. And I try to go to as many things as possible. And there's things that I miss, and
Same.
I regret not being there. And you know, the fact that I don't go to a certain event doesn't mean I don't support that organization. I try, when people send me letters, I try to donate to every charity I can because it's important to serve everybody. And I don't care your political persuasion. Everybody,
Serve.
whatever's important to the members of the community, that you're there and involved.
I was at my younger career, way back in the day, I was at a Rotary meeting, and I always liked sitting with the old people in the room. And by old, now I'm that person, right? So
Not quite. You
not
getting it?
that, that group was, you know, right up there, and they were having a discussion about the meaning of life, right? These really big,
42.
yeah, you know, these big questions, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I want to hear
Yeah.
from the folks in the room that have this lived wisdom. You know, there's a lot of gray in the room at that table. And I always sought them out because there's something about a lived experience that when they share with you, you learn through the process. So I'm sitting there as a youngster listening to these very long seasoned Rotarians, members in the community, business leaders. There was about 5 or 6 of them. They were talking about the meaning of life, Rep. And they're going back and forth on what it means and what it's about and what's important. And there was a gentleman that was, to your point earlier, you know, kind of, he was a little bit stoic and quiet. But when he said it, everybody agreed with what his perspective on what the meaning of life was. He says, the meaning of why we are here is to be in service of one another, to help make each other's lives better so that we can all exist in this space that is short. It's finite. To your point, it's miss, right?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think he was absolutely right about that. You know, you sit there when you process that, yeah, if you can be in the service of others, it's not just about, to your point earlier, serving those individuals. It's also about serving yourself in terms of the things that it does for you as a human being to do something good for someone else.
Imagine if everyone in society had self-control and the ability to help others. I mean,
Yeah.
you take care of yourself and you control your emotions and you grow as a person, mature as a person, and then have the mindset of then helping others do
Yeah.
the same. Society would be so much better. Man, 9 times out of 10, the problems that come through my office, it's a breakdown of somebody making a poor choice, poor
Yeah.
life choice, failing to exercise self-control, and they've gotten themselves or somebody has gotten them into a situation that they need help. And we want to help them as human beings. I'm not sure the government's the best way to help everybody. We have so many great nonprofits down here. I'll tell you what, besides the institutions that we've talked about, the nonprofits that we have in Brazoria County are so great, and we love supporting them because they do a good job.
We
don't
do.
have-
We've got some really great
we have great
organizations.
nonprofits.
Great nonprofits.
I'm not going to
great
name one because then
community.
I'd leave one out, but we know who they are.
And then the headline's going to be the
Yeah,
rep
rep doesn't
leaves-
care about, you know, but there's so many. Like, if
Yeah.
you need help with anything, I virtually guarantee you there's a nonprofit in
That's
Brazoria
right.
County.
Yeah,
that's
we
willing to help
are
you.
really blessed. We're really blessed. Rep, we are almost to the end of the podcast. I got one last question for
Yeah.
you. So as a state leader, what's one bold move you think Texas needs to make to prepare itself for the next 20, 30 years, you know, in the world of enhanced technologies, quantum computing, AI, all these energy and data centers that are being, you know, distributed throughout the state? What's a bold move that the state needs to do, in your opinion, to kind of prepare for the future?
Nukes.
Nuclear power?
That's a singular thing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we went through a series of anti-nuclear reactions, you know, in a sense, like they became unpopular. You saw what happened in Germany. They closed their nuclear plants. Probably that'll go down probably in history as one of the most boneheaded geopolitical and environmental and just society decisions in world history. We need more nuclear power in the state of Texas. We need the small modular nuclear reactors
Yep.
that are safer, walk away safe, and we need more nuclear power. It provides a steady stream of clean energy that can power all the things that we need. The 21st century and heading into the 22nd century, the power demands are going to be through the roof. Now, we've made some investments at the state level. Only certain things we can do. The feds have to step in as well because we need to regulate nukes as well because you don't
Yeah.
want that stuff
Sure.
turning into getting out, getting loose, and hurting people. But we need more nuclear power in the state of Texas. And I think if we had more nuclear power, it would address so many of the issues that we're seeing, both for electricity rates, for data centers. People are so many concerned about data centers and where they're being built, and what kind of power they're using. You had small modular nuclear reactors. You could put them in the middle of nowhere, totally self-contained with a fiber optic line.
Yeah.
It would solve so many problems. So I'm telling you, the second thing would be water. I don't want to say like nukes is it, but man, if I had to pick one, I'd say nukes.
Yeah, it gives it the energy that we'll need at some point for desalination.
Oh God, it drives everything.
Yeah, they sit on 14 acres.
It
They're
drives everything.
yeah. The other thing that I read just the other day, it said that over the next 10 years, these data centers are going to consume half of Texas's energy.
I know.
Right, so to your point, we need to figure that piece out.
And right now in our current mix, they're using natural gas. Well, those droplets are the gas is not able to come down into Brazoria County to be consumed by our petrochemical operations. So we've got to rebalance it. And nuclear energy, I think, is going to be the thing in the 2030s, for sure.
Rep, we are going to have to bring you back to talk more about some of these topics. The focus of the day was on leadership, and I want to thank you for stepping in.
Thank you for having me, and
leaning
appreciate
in.
your leadership,
Yeah,
Dr. Solis
thank
here
you.
at Bradsport College. I
I
think y'all doing a
appreciate
great
you,
job.
Rep. We couldn't do without you. And again, thank you so much for supporting Bradsport College and for just being an advocate and a champion of the people in our community.
Thank you for having me.
Folks, thank you so much for joining us today. Cody Vasut, representative for the state of Texas and our area. We look forward to having you on the next adventure of Chomp Talk here at Bradsport College. Thanks for joining us and for being a part of Bradsport College. We appreciate all you do for our students and our community. Have a great one. We'll see you next time.